Hey everyone, Will here. Today's a very exciting day. Just like the last video that I did with the BRZ when I first picked it up, I'm on my way down on the train to Sutherland to hopefully pick up my new car. Now, what I've done is I put down a deposit on a car that I haven't actually seen yet, pending inspection. So I said very, very strictly in the conditions, if I'm not happy with the condition of it, I'm pulling out of the deal, and they've agreed to that. So I'm about to jump on the train and go and see it for the first time. So let's get out of here. So I'm back in Sutherland Station again, the exact same place where I got picked up when I picked up the BRZ, so it's really strange being here. So I'm gonna get picked up in the new car, so we should see it any minute. Alright, so here it is, 2014 BMW M235 is the new car. So just picked it up from the dealership. They wouldn't actually let me film at the dealership, which is the reason why I'm here now. So I thought what I did was I just drove it up the road to a different spot, and I thought we'd start from here. So as you can see, it's got the M Sport package on it. So the front lip, the front grills, 19-inch wheels, the color-coded side skirts, and rear diffuser as well, and carbon fibre little boot lip as well. Now I'll jump inside. See, I've got the oyster leather interior. So yeah, it turned out what basically the story was, found it online through the dealership that was stocking it, and put a deposit down on it straight away to secure it. They actually had it listed as a base model and had all these extras on it, which I'll go through in another video later on. But yeah, had all the extras on it, so I jumped on it straight away, put down a deposit pending inspection, and I've just been to see it now, and yeah, very happy with it. It's got a few tiny little marks on it in a few places, but nothing major and nothing that can't be fixed. And yeah, so I got it for a really good price, and really happy with it. So yeah, so it's just a really nice place to be after the BRZ. I mean, the BRZ was really nice inside, but you know, absolutely loving this so far. So what I'll do is I literally just jumped in it and just cruised it up to here to record the initial bit of video. So what I'll do is I'll mount the camera and we can do some recording while I drive it. I haven't really driven the car properly yet, so it's going to be an experience. So yeah, we'll get into it. Alright, so the first thing I wanted to just sort of explain while I'm sort of getting used to the car and driving is just why I've chosen this car. Now, I know a lot of people were sort of questioning, you know, what car I was going to get, and you know, what would be next, all that kind of thing. And you know, a lot of people were saying, oh, he's going to get an Evo, he's going to get a WRX STI, like everybody else that upgrades from a BRZ pretty much. But no, look, I mean, my criteria for the new car was basically I wanted something that was fast from factory, that I didn't have to do much modification to in terms of performance, something that was comfortable for the everyday drive, something that had a bit of space in it in the back for the kids if I ever need to put them in there. But you know, and I looked at a 335i 4-door, which is, you know, same engine as this, bit bigger, bit heavier. Obviously the 4 doors was practical, more practical than this. but I found to drive, it was a little bit sloppier than this. This really feels like a sports car to drive. And I mean, obviously they've similar kind of acceleration, but the handling in this car is just tighter, and you feel more confident and more connected to the road in this car, I found, than the 335. So, and I thought about it a lot and discussed it with my wife, and I kind of thought, well, for the 1% of the time that I'm going to wish I had back doors, the other 99% of the time I'm going to be glad that I don't. So I'm going to go with the 99% rather than the 1%. So I feel like that was the right decision. We'll see what I feel like once I'm actually putting kids in and out of it and everything. But yeah, look, it's not a family car. I do have another car which is a family car. So what I wanted to do was sell the BRZ and get something that was more practical for a daily commute, and something that money that I spent on modifications wasn't completely wasted. So I started looking at second-hand cars. I wasn't going to buy something brand new again, and I found the M235 and sort of thought, well, you know what, if I get one that's roughly the same age as the BRZ that I'm selling, then the money that I've spent on modifications, which I'll lose when I sell it, is kind of compensated for by the depreciation of a brand new BMW. So, and this was a almost $95,000 car when it was new, with all the extra options and trims that are on this phone. So, and I picked it up for only a little bit more than half that. So, and it's only got 20,000 kilometers on it. So, it's basically a new car for half the price. There's, like I said, there's a couple of little marks on it and stuff like that, but it's all stuff that can be easily fixed. And in the general sense, it's in new condition. I was really impressed with it. Obviously dealerships always say, yeah, it's in great condition, but this, really is in fantastic shape considering it's a second-hand car. So, yeah, I thought, well, it was kind of like traveling back in time and buying this instead of the BRZ, but still managing to have had the fun of building the BRZ. So I kind of feel like by buying this car, I'm having my cake and eating it too, which is a nice feeling. There are a few sleepless, stressful nights where I was kind of going, I've spent all this money on the BRZ, and I love the car. It's a fantastic car, but it's not practical for the life stage that I then found myself in, with driving it to work every day, when it was originally intended to just sort of be a weekend toy. So I've swapped it for something that I can enjoy on the drive every day in comfort, good quality sound, nice smooth ride, but then I can chuck it into sports mode and really have some fun with it still. And this thing, from the test drives that I've had in other ones, is it's an extremely fast car. There's no two ways about it. It's a sports car that is also comfortable. So that's the reason why I chose this car. And I didn't want to go for an all-wheel drive car. I've had WRXs for 10 years before the BRZ, and like I said in my early videos for Project BRZ, they're just boring to drive for me. Like, they're fast in a straight line and they're fast around a track, but if you just want to hook it a little bit sideways around a corner, or get a little bit taily in the wet and that kind of thing, you just can't really do it without going really, really fast and being a little bit crazy. And there's not all that much drama to driving those cars. So I decided to get something that was rear-wheel drive again, and have my cake and eat it too in that sense. So really, really happy with this car. Now, in terms of the initial impressions, I love all the connected drive stuff. I love that all the information is just kind of there in front of you, and the digital displays and stuff. I love the leather. I love the oyster interior. It's a world apart from the BRZ, and it's just, like I said, it's a really, really nice place to be. And you feel like you're in an expensive car. I mean, it is an expensive car, but you really feel like you're in a luxury expensive car, which is a nice feeling after being in the BRZs and WRXs for years, which I did a lot of work to make them nice, but they're just not in the same ballpark as something like this. So I'm really, really glad that I'm in that position. The driving position's comfortable, the steering wheel's nice to hold. It's weird driving an automatic again, but I actually kind of don't miss the manual just sitting in traffic. And on the test drives that I've had with these cars, the paddle shift gearbox is really, really tight, 8 speeds as well, which is cool. So there's lots of gears to go through, lots of fun to have, and it's really responsive as well. It's not so many sports shift automatics that I've driven. You press the button to change gear and you wait for anywhere between a few milliseconds to half a second sometimes for it to change gear. And Then the gear change is sloppy on top of that as well. So you you change gear and you wait for it to do something and it doesn't do it, and then it just spoils it. So with this thing, the gear changes are immediate, and I love that. But if you want to just stick it in automatic in drive and just cruise along, you can do that too. So, it's really comfortable in that regard. There's hardly any road noise at all compared to the BRZ, which is really nice. It's got 19-inch wheels on it, as you saw. They're 7.5-inch wide on the front and either 8 or 8.5 inch on the back, I think. I'm not up with all the specs yet, but yeah, it's a staggered setup because it's rear-wheel drive and pretty high powered. But yeah, considering the tires are quite a bit skinnier than they were on the BRZ after I modified it, but the road noise even now is less than the BRZ was stock, so that's nice. I need to stop comparing this car to the BRZ, I'm sorry. But look, I'm loving cruising along. The steering feels quite light. Like it feels like you're in kind of a luxury car rather than a sports car when you're in comfort mode. But if you chuck it into sports mode, it tightens up, it gets a little bit heavier. So just sort of cruising around town at at moderate speeds and that kind of thing, out of the traffic, like it's just such a comfortable car to drive. It feels connected to the road, it feels responsive, it feels, I guess, sort of well behaved. Like you're confident, it's inspiring to drive it. You're confident that it's going to do what you want it to do, and you don't feel every little bump in the road like you did with the BRZ. You don't feel the steering doesn't feel quite as, maybe precise is the wrong word, it doesn't feel quite as connected as it did in the BRZ, but it's still precise, and it's hard to describe, but it feels expensive. The steering feels expensive, and it's bizarre, but it's just the right weight. It's a nice thickness diameter steering wheel, and it's just really, really comfortable to drive. Yet it's confidence inspiring as well, which I've never really had in a car before. Like you either you have a performance car that you make certain sacrifices so that you have something that goes fast and feels sport-like to drive, or you have a luxury car that is boring but comfortable. And this just feels to me like it's just nailed that middle ground, and it's not compromising really on anything. It's both, and it does both well, which to me is just, I'm absolutely thrilled with it, because it's exactly what I wanted out of a car. And I'm just so excited driving it, and I'm comfortable driving along in traffic. The brakes are smooth, the acceleration's smooth, and then you stick it into sport mode and it just absolutely hammers. So I'm getting pretty close to the twisty roads now, so I'll give you my impressions and take you along for the drive once we hit those twisties. I remember vividly the feeling I had coming around these exact same bends for the first time in the BRZ, and how exciting it was. And like that car, it was a lot more dramatic to drive at moderate speeds on corners like this, but it was just, there was a certain discomfort to it. And I absolutely loved that car, but this is just so much better in every regard. I can't put my finger on exactly what it is, but the steering is just the right weight, the brakes are just the right feel. Like I don't feel like there's anything that I would want to change about this. And that's the first time I've ever had a car that I've got into it and I've been like, this is awesome, but every other car I've been like, this is amazing, but I'd change this, and this. So, I put different suspension, I put different brakes, I put, whereas this is just, everything about it I just love immediately. It feels well connected to the road, and it's comfortable, and it just goes when you put your foot down. There's no delay. The power's there instantly, despite being a turbocharged engine. It's a twin, not twin turbo, but they call it twin power, which is a twin scroll turbo, which means that you're spooling up the turbo more quickly, so you got more power down low. But it's a 3-litre straight 6 engine as well in this car. Now I've only ever owned 2-litre and 2.5-litre cars before, so I'm not used to having that kind of low down power. The BRZ had it with the supercharger, but the boost was down low and ramped up with the RPMs, whereas this has got a lot more power on tap down low than any car I've ever, this car's got more power than any car I've ever owned before to begin with, but the responsiveness is really, really impressive. and I'm stuck behind a learner driver now. The driving gods are against me today, or maybe they're protecting me, I don't know, but yeah, look, I'm just loving driving this car. It's just fantastic. Alright, so just overtaken the learner driver, so now I can drive at the speed that I want to go. I'm not going to go crazy because, you know, like I did with the BRZ, I'm not familiar with this car. I've not spent a whole lot of time driving it, and I don't want to do anything silly, but I will say that I feel a sense of confidence driving this car that I probably didn't have immediately with the BRZ. I remember there are a couple of things that took me by surprise on the first drive of the BRZ. Like, it was a little bit more taily than I thought it would be, and I think that's just probably because of the narrow tyres. But you know, this, I feel like I've been driving it for years, and I feel confident enough to go around corners really, really, really quickly. What I'm more worried about is just that my confidence will get ahead of my ability, and that I'll end up putting it into the fence because it'll do something that I'm not expecting because I have so much confidence in it, if that makes any sense. So but oh, just the engine sound and the steering is just brilliant. Love this car. Just the power's there immediately, and just the right amount of body roll. I mean, it's a lot more body roll than I'm used to, but it just sails over the bumps. You only feel the bumps that you need to feel. Everything else is just filtered out by the suspension. It really is a masterpiece of engineering, this car. Just, I don't want to ramble on, but it is just incredible. That engine sound, love it. That was the one thing, one of the things that I just really didn't like about my BRZ was just, it just sounded like it was struggling all the time. Like, even with the exhaust on it, it was not a nice sounding engine. And, you know, I had equal length headers on it, which didn't help. If I'd put unequal length headers on it, it would have sounded better, but I'm going to put it into sports shift mode now. But this thing just sounds brilliant. Just hugs the turn. Oh man, I just want this road to go on forever. The only thing that's lacking from the sound, like the exhaust to me is just the right amount of volume. The only thing that's lacking is I'd love a little bit more induction noise, so I think we may end up having to do an intake on the car just purely for the sound. You know, it'd be nice to have that turbo spooling sound, and you know, I guess I haven't quite grown out of that yet, but you know, I gotta say, like, it is a beautifully refined car, and it almost would be a shame to spoil that by putting an intake on it to make it a little bit more dramatic, but I think I'm gonna have to do it. But yeah, the exhaust sound is really, really nice. I'll probably end up wanting to change it at some point, but you know, like I just said before, like, to jump in a car and not really want to change anything straight away in terms of the handling and the responsiveness is pretty remarkable. And I know that these cars are pretty detuned from factory as well. Like, I mean, you can get, just with an intake and a tune, oh, listen to that. Brilliant. Just with an intake and a tune, you can get an extra sort of 40, almost 50 kilowatts, I think, out of these things. I think you're pushing about 270, 280 kilowatts at the wheels, which is starting to get towards the M2 performance. And I mean, one of the things that people have talked about a lot with this car is that it's, you know, it's such a good car that it almost, you got to question why you'd bother with an M2. And I mean, I haven't driven an M2, so I can't really say, but I can't imagine being much more happy with it. I mean, obviously higher level of trim inside, slightly more sporty feel, but this car's got such a fantastic balance between comfort and performance that, you know, I can't really see how you would improve that. And you know, this is the most expensive and, you know, best car that I've ever owned by far. So my benchmark is now raised. So I'm sure that if I was to spend some time in an M2 or something like that, I'd straight away I'd understand why you'd spend the extra. But you know, this thing's incredible for the money that I spent on it. Like, to know that I'm driving around in a car that 2 years ago cost almost $100,000, and I picked it up for, you know, almost half that, you know, just a little bit more than half that. Man, I'm so happy with this car. Absolutely thrilled. I'm not having to hammer it around, and you know, it does lack that kind of go-kart feel that the BRZ had, like, you know, chucking it around and, you know, having to go wide open throttle to really get into the power band and that kind of thing. But there's something really nice about just having that power there straight away and not having to plant your foot. And again, it's just that perfect balance of performance and style that I just love. One thing you do have to be careful of is your speed. You don't get the same sense of speed from this car as my other cars that I've owned. It's a lot more similar to my Forester in that regard. My Forester, you can be doing 170 and feel like you're doing 80. And you know, this is kind of similar. You don't realize how fast you're going until you look down at the speedo and you're like, oops. Whereas, you know, BRZ always felt like I was going faster than I actually was, which was kind of cool. But creaks and rattles in the back, which I wasn't expecting. The upholstery rattles a little bit, but that's nothing that can't be fixed, I don't suppose. Oh, this thing. Oh, I love this car so much. Oh my god. Oh, I cannot wipe the smile off my face. This is just brilliant. It makes me, like, honestly, it makes me feel silly for spending so much money on the BRZ, but, you know, I sold it for a good price, and I picked this up for a good price, and I've made up the difference on the depreciation. So, the tail comes out, and you just feel confident. You don't feel like you're going to put it in the fence if you're not careful. Like, it's so well connected to the road. You feel like you're invincible driving this thing. Like, you feel like you could just hammer it and it wouldn't hurt you, and that scares me a little bit, because I know that it's encouraging me to drive it harder than it's encouraging me to drive the car beyond my ability, which worries me. And you know, I'm really looking forward to taking this down to a skid pan day or something like that, just to get more familiar and explore the limits of the car, because I can just imagine the things that you could do in this car with the driving ability. And you know, like, I'm a pretty experienced and pretty well-versed driver, but I know that this car is capable of so much more than I'm exploring, and I feel like the temptation is always going to be there to drive it a little bit harder than I probably should. So yeah, definitely going to have to invest in some proper driver training and stuff again, I think. It's been a long time since I've done it, and it would be great to have a refresher. Just sails through the revs, sails through the gears. The steering is just so many people complain that the steering in these things is disappointing, and they say, you know, the 335 E90 series was a disappointment, and that the M235 was an improvement, but it's still shit. And like, I mean, I don't know what other cars they're driving to reach that conclusion, but to me, the steering in this thing is brilliant. Like, it maintains the same weight throughout the corners. It doesn't suddenly get heavy when you start drifting a little bit, or like, it just feels perfect. But you know, it's not giving the feedback that some drivers might want, but I feel like I'm feeling what I need to, and you know, it's comfortable. So it's definitely, I mean, I've heard people describe it as sloppy, and it's anything but that. It's not sloppy at all. I love it. back into drive mode now. I'm pulling up behind another car now, but oh man, like I'm so stoked with this thing, and I cannot wait to explore its potential both in driving and, you know, tweaking things around a little bit. There's a whole bunch of videos I want to do about this car. You know, I've lived and breathed Subaru engines for the last 15 years, and, you know, I know them inside out. I know, you know, so much about them, but, you know, BMW, obviously I've got the principles down. I understand how engines work and that kind of thing, but, you know, I'm starting completely from scratch with a BMW. I've never owned a European car before. I've never owned a straight six before. I've never owned a twin scroll turbocharged car before. You know, there's so many firsts with this car, and, you know, I open up the bonnet, I look inside the engine bay, and I'm like, I don't know what anything is. So it's exciting. I'm really looking forward to exploring and learning and sharing that experience with you guys. So look, I'm going to leave the video at that for now. What I'm going to be doing is I'll be doing a series of videos about the car, covering all the details of it, going through the entertainment system, going through the trim options, going through the engine performance, all that kind of stuff. So you know, expect a whole lot more videos coming out pretty soon. I'll get stuck into it as quickly as I possibly can. But the other thing, just to note quickly, is that I do have a baby due in about 2 weeks. So there might be a bit of a lull in the videos while that's all going on and we're adjusting to that. So, but yeah, look, I'm absolutely over the moon with this car. I could go on for hours about it, but I'd be rambling. So I'm going to wrap it up there. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.